I remember the moment everything changed, though it lasted only a few seconds. I was 3 corridors away when the alert reached me. My name is Commander Elena Reyes, and I serve as a security attaché for the human delegation aboard Council Station Threshold, a massive meeting place where hundreds of species gather to talk, trade, and try to keep peace across the galaxy. That day, peace nearly broke apart because someone decided to hurt a child. The child's name was Marcus Webb. He was 7 years old, the son of an engineering family who kept the station's gravity systems running. Marcus loved building small drones. That day, one of his little machines flew off on its own, and like any curious child, he chased after it. He wandered into a service corridor that was supposed to be off-limits, but children rarely think about rules when they are chasing something they love. In that corridor, a patrol of Vothari enforcers found him. The Vothari were a proud and powerful species, known for their strength and their belief that gentleness was a weakness. Their leader, a warlord named Cassian Thane, had spent months telling anyone who would listen that humans were too soft, too attached to their young, and that this attachment could be used against us. He believed that if he could shake our resolve, he could gain the upper hand in trade talks that had been stuck for weeks. So when his enforcers found a human child alone, they did not walk away. They caused him harm, quickly and without hesitation, right there in that quiet corridor, hoping the message would spread fast. Humans were not as strong as they claimed to be. I received the alert 41 seconds later. I was sitting across from a Ethrian trade minister, going over new language for a shipping agreement, when my communicator lit up with an emergency signal. The words on the screen were simple. Human miner injured, Service Corridor 12, immediate response required. I do not remember standing up, I only remember running. The Ithrian minister later told the council that she had never seen a human move so quickly. I do not doubt her. Every step I took, I thought only one thing. Not this child, not while I am here. When I reached the corridor, I saw Marcus sitting against the wall, holding his arm close to his body, his face pale with shock. The enforcer who had caused his injury still stood nearby, unbothered, as if nothing unusual had happened. I did not look at him first. I knelt beside Marcus, spoke gently, and told him he was safe now, that the difficult part was over, and that I would not leave his side. That moment matters more to me than anything that came after. People who hear this story often focus on what happened next, on the speed and the shock of it. But for me, the most important part was kneeling beside a frightened child and making sure he knew, without any doubt, that someone was there to protect him. Only after he calmed down did I stand and turn toward the enforcer. I did not shout. I did not threaten him. I simply walked to the nearest communication panel and spoke 4 words into it. Authorization Reyes 7. Execute Thornfield. Thornfield was not something most people on the station knew about. It was a quiet agreement built into our delegation's security plans from the very first day humanity joined the Galactic Council. It existed for one purpose only: to respond immediately and decisively if any council member ever used harm against a human child to gain political advantage. It had never been used before. Most species did not even know it existed, which was exactly the point. Within minutes, a response team was moving through the station. I later learned it took them about 4 minutes to reach Warlord Thane's private shuttle, which remained docked at Threshold under diplomatic protection. Thane had been confident that no one would dare approach him there, especially not while negotiations were still technically ongoing. He was wrong. The response team secured him without much trouble. He seemed almost amused at first, certain that this was simply a misunderstanding that could be resolved with a few sharp words about diplomatic immunity. He spent several minutes explaining, quite calmly, that humanity would face serious consequences for interfering with his protected status. He was still speaking when they brought him before the Galactic Assembly. I want to be clear about something here, because the story often gets exaggerated in the retelling. I did not personally decide his fate. What happened next was the result of evidence, law, and the Council's own rules, not anger or revenge. Every piece of evidence was gathered quickly. Sensors in the corridor had recorded the entire encounter. Medical scans confirmed the injury to Marcus's arm. Recorded statements from Thane himself, made in earlier meetings, showed his open belief that human children could be used as leverage against us. All of this was presented to the Assembly within the hour. The council chamber that day was unlike anything I had experienced before. Representatives from dozens of species filled the room, their expressions ranging from concern to disbelief. Many of them had children of their own, in one form or another, and the idea of using a child to gain political advantage struck a chord that crossed every cultural boundary. The vote, when it came, was unanimous. Every species present agreed that a leader who ordered harm against a protected child, especially on neutral ground, meant to be safe for all, had given up any right to the protections he once held. What happened afterward was, in many ways, out of human hands. Among the Vothari, there existed strict codes of honor that governed how their leaders behaved. A leader who brought such shame upon his people, especially through an act against a defenseless child, could not simply continue leading. The Vothari delegation itself requested permission to handle the consequences according to their own traditions. The council allowed it. I did not take part in what followed. I stayed with Marcus and his family instead, making sure he received proper care and that his parents understood everything that had happened. That, to me, was the more important task. Word spread quickly across the station and beyond. Within a single day, every major species connected to the council had heard some version of the story. Some exaggerated it, turning it into tales of human fury and unstoppable force. Others focused on the speed of the response, wondering how such a system had existed quietly for so long without anyone noticing. But the detail that mattered most to me was simpler. From that day forward, everyone understood that harming a human child, anywhere under council protection, would bring consequences no one could ignore. In the weeks that followed, I was asked to speak before several delegations about what had happened. Many wanted to understand why humanity had built something like Thornfield in the first place. I remember one Ythrian diplomat asking me directly, "Did you truly believe another species would attempt such a thing?" I told her the truth. We had not expected any single event exactly like what happened with Marcus. But history had taught us, again and again, that any advantage one side believes it holds, someone will eventually try to use. We knew that our care for our children was something other species might see as gentleness, perhaps even weakness. We built Thornfield not because we expected it to be needed, but because we understood that hope alone was not protection. The diplomat considered this for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Then you built a promise," she said, "not a threat." Her words stayed with me. That was exactly what Thornfield was meant to be. A promise. A quiet declaration that certain lines existed, whether or not anyone acknowledged them out loud, and that crossing those lines would have consequences that could not be negotiated away. Marcus recovered fully within a few weeks. Human bodies heal, and children in particular tend to bounce back, with a resilience that always amazes me. He returned to his drones almost immediately, chasing them through corridors with the same fearless curiosity he had before. His parents asked that he be given a small security escort whenever he wandered near restricted areas, not because he needed constant protection, but because they, understandably, needed peace of mind. I saw him from time to time in the months that followed. He never seemed to carry the weight of what had happened. Children often surprise us that way. He would wave at me across the station's main concourse, proudly show me his latest drone design, and ask questions about my work that had nothing to do with what had happened to him. I think, in some ways, that was the greatest sign that things were healing properly. The rest of the galaxy did not forget so easily. Within the council, new discussions began almost immediately about protections for children of all species, not just humans. Delegates from a dozen worlds proposed formal agreements modeled loosely on what humanity had quietly built for itself. It took time, negotiation, and no small amount of debate, but eventually, a broader set of protections was adopted, meant to ensure that no species would ever again consider using a child as a tool for political gain. I like to think that something good grew out of what had been a terrible day. Marcus never asked to be part of galactic history, and he certainly never asked to be the reason an entire set of protections was created. But children, in their innocence, often reveal truths that adults spend years avoiding. His experience reminded every species present, humans included, that some things must remain protected no matter how tense negotiations become. As for Warlord Thane, his name became something of a lesson taught to young Vothari leaders in training. Not a story of humanity's cruelty, as some had feared it might become, but a warning about the dangers of underestimating another species' resolve, and the cost of using the vulnerable as pawns in games of power. I still think about that day often. I think about the sound of my own footsteps echoing down that corridor, faster than I ever remember running. I think about kneeling beside Marcus, feeling his small hand grip mine, and promising him, without knowing exactly how I would keep that promise, that he was safe. Most of all, I think about how quickly everything can change when someone crosses a line that should never be crossed. 10 minutes. That is how long it took from the moment Marcus was harmed to the moment the assembly convened to address it. 10 minutes for a system, quietly built and rarely spoken of, to prove that some protections are not simply words on paper. People sometimes ask me if I regret how quickly things moved that day, whether a slower, more careful approach might have avoided the tension that followed with the Vothari delegation for months afterward. I always give them the same answer. I regret that it happened at all. I regret that any child, human or otherwise, ever has to experience harm because of decisions made by adults chasing power. But I do not regret the response. Some promises must be kept immediately, without hesitation, or they mean nothing at all. Today, when new delegates arrive at Council Station threshold, they are given a brief overview of station history, covering major agreements, key negotiations, and important events. Marcus's story is included now, told carefully and without sensationalism, focused on the outcome rather than the injury itself. The lesson taught is simple. Every species represented in the Council has agreed, formally and permanently, that children deserve protection above all political considerations. I think that is a fitting legacy for a 7-year-old boy who only wanted to chase his drone through a quiet corridor. He never intended to become a symbol of anything. He simply wanted his machine back. But sometimes, the smallest moments reveal the deepest truths about who we are and what we are willing to protect. Marcus is older now, still curious, still building things far more complicated than the drone that started it all. Sometimes I catch him watching the stars through the station's observation deck, wondering, perhaps, about all the worlds he has not yet seen. I hope he grows up in a galaxy that remembers the lesson his story taught, not as a tale of fear, but as a reminder of what care and quick action can accomplish when it truly matters. That, to me, is the real ending of this story. Not the swift response, not the consequences that followed, but the quiet, steady promise that stood behind it all, that some things, no matter the cost, must always be protected.